Why John Cleese refuses to watch one episode he filmed in 1975. You'd think a man who made the whole planet laugh at dead parrots and silly walks would happily re-watch any clip of his own work. Yet John Cleese keeps one 30-minute reel locked away like forbidden treasure. That reel is The Germans, an episode he filmed for Fawlty Towers in 1975. Fans still shout, "Don't mention the war," in every bar from London to Sydney, but Cleese refuses to sit through it again. Why would the king of silly comedy avoid one of his most famous triumphs? Let's stroll back through his story and find out. John Marwood Cleese entered the world on 27 October 1939 in the breezy seaside town of Weston-super-Mare. His father had traded army life for the safer grind of insurance, and his mother nursed a garden of anxieties that kept her son on alert. By 14, John had blasted past 6 feet, all legs and elbows, a walking target for playground jokes. Laughter became armor. He discovered that one clever quip could flip a bully's mood, so he started hoarding jokes like spare change. Schooling was serious. Clifton College demanded stiff collars and Latin verbs, but John's notebooks filled with doodles and one-liners. Tallness, awkwardness, curiosity. Together, they brewed mischief. Then Cambridge accepted him to study law. Everyone assumed he'd become a proper barrister. Instead, he joined Footlights, the university's comedy club, and found a tribe just as odd as he was. Graham Chapman, Eric Idle, Michael Palin, Terry Jones, and Terry Gilliam soon shared the same wavelength, twisting everyday logic into glorious nonsense. Monty Python's Flying Circus burst onto BBC Two in 1969. Viewers saw a minister demonstrating silly walks, and a shopkeeper insisting his parrot was merely resting. Sketches ended abruptly, cartoons invaded live action, and respectability melted under waves of absurdity. Cleese's height and booming voice gave his characters instant authority, only for him to wreck that authority with a single manic shriek. 4 seasons and several films later, Holy Grail, Life of Brian, The Meaning of Life, Python had reshaped comedy, and Cleese was hungry for a smaller stage. Enter Fawlty Towers. In 1971, John and his den wife Connie Booth stayed at a Torquay hotel whose owner barked at guests and tossed luggage around. The experience begged for a sitcom. Basil Fawlty would be the volcanic manager, Sybil the sharp-tongued wife, Polly the calm maid, Manuel the bewildered waiter. Each episode would trap Basil under mounting disasters until he exploded. Writing was torture. Cleese once rewrote a single scene 27 times. The pain paid off. When the first series aired in 1975, the nation howled. 5 episodes down, 1 to go, and tension simmered. The final script, The Germans, aimed to satirize clueless British prejudice. Basil suffers concussion, tries to run the hotel alone, and is desperate not to insult German tourists. Of course, he offends them within seconds. A stuffed moose head had to fall on cue, a fire alarm had to trigger chaos, and Basil's climactic goose step had to be shocking, yet funny. Recording night delivered uproarious laughter. Viewers later hailed the episode as the series' crown jewel. But when the applause faded, Cleese felt hollow. He'd poured so much real frustration into Basil's rant that watching it replay would be like swallowing his own anger. He boxed the memory and moved on. For decades, that was the story. A brilliant episode, slightly edgy, widely loved. Then the internet changed everything. Jokes from 1975 collided with 21st century sensibilities. Younger fans winced at the Major's racial slur. Others said Basil's Hitler routine hurt German viewers. In June 2020, amid global protests over racial injustice, UK TV temporarily removed The Germans, promising a content review. Cleese holidaying in the Caribbean exploded on Twitter. The episode returned with a warning label, but the damage to his mood was done. He'd fought cancel culture for years. Seeing his own work tagged harmful felt like a punch in the gut. He drew a personal line: no more screenings. Behind that decision sits a lifetime of pressure. Cleese has spoken about walking on eggshells around his mercurial mother. That childhood tension trained him to anticipate every reaction, a talent useful for comedy but brutal for peace of mind. Therapy became routine. 4 marriages unraveled. One divorce cost him so much he toured a show called Alimony Tour, Paying My Ex-Wife. The title was a joke, the bills were real. Perfectionism never loosened its grip. During Fawlty Towers rehearsals, he timed laughs down to fractions of a second. Castmates loved him, but dreaded his stare when a line fell flat. That drive made Basil unforgettable, yet left Cleese drained. Watching The Germans would mean reliving a week when adrenaline nearly burned him out. Fast forward to 2023. News broke that Cleese and daughter Camila were scripting a brand new Fawlty Towers set in a Caribbean boutique hotel. Fans cheered, critics predicted disaster. How could Basil survive modern HR policies? Months passed without updates, rumors swirled of stalled negotiations, and investors grew nervous. Meanwhile, Cleese adapted 3 classic episodes, including the infamous 6th, into a West End play. On opening night, he mingled in the foyer but left the auditorium during the goose step scene. His clashes with modern culture kept piling up. A tweet joking that a controversial advisor should be suspended by the neck drew uproar. He insisted it was gallows humor, a tradition older than Twitter. Comment sections exploded anyway. Each flare-up reminded him how nimble outrage can be. A clip edited out of context travels faster than reason. The Germans might survive another half-century, but would its nuance survive TikTok? Better, he reasons, not to feed the algorithm. Yet something keeps the episode alive. Comedy teachers dissect its structure. Escalating stakes, running gags, physical chaos, all condensed into 30 minutes. Younger comics ask whether the same story could be told today, and if so, how? Historians note that only 30 years separated Basil's jokes from the real war. Today, it's 80. Distance changes the echo of a punchline. Cleese sometimes softens. In a 2024 podcast, he admitted he still loves Basil's frantic energy, but winces at the Major's language. Would he cut that scene now? Possibly, he said, though I'd rather people learn why it's offensive than pretend it never happened. Comedy's job, he believes, isn't to be safe, but to make clear who the fool is. The fool, in his view, is always Basil. Meanwhile, the rest of Fawlty Towers enjoys evergreen status. Tourist shops sell "Don't Mention the War" mugs, and Airbnb hosts decorate rooms to mimic the hotel lobby. Millions who never saw the original broadcast discover clips online every year. Some laugh, some cringe, many do both. That mixed response is exactly what satire intends, to jolt the audience before offering relief.
So why does Cleese skip the jolt? Picture opening an old diary page where you ranted at full volume. The words capture truth, but reading them might reignite anger you no longer carry. Cleese fears that spark. He also fears the modern jury. Comedy is timing, and timing includes the era. He delivered his punchline in 1975. Replaying it in 2025 could feel like punching himself. Still, the legend works on. He hosts the Dinosaur Hour on GB News, poking fun at his own fossil status. He lectures on creativity, telling students they need freedom to be silly and courage to be wrong. He voices animated kings, appears in cameos, and tours stand-up shows where he gleefully dissects his divorces. But when fans ask about Basil's goose step, he chuckles and changes the subject. Cleese's avoidance of that single episode becomes even more striking when you remember how happily he revisits almost every other corner of his career. He'll quote the parrot sketch on cue, reenact Sir Lancelot's castle-storming rampage from Holy Grail, even hum the cheerful throat-slitting tune from Meaning of Life. He owns the silly and the savage alike. But The Germans triggers a specific cocktail of memories. A studio thermometer reading 37 degrees, a malfunctioning prop door that bruised his shin, and the feeling that one mistimed laugh might ruin months of work. Friends say the episode also marks the moment Basil Fawlty and John Cleese nearly fused. Basil's rages were heightened theater, yet they sprang from real nerves. During rehearsals, Cleese sometimes stayed in character between takes, stalking corridors and muttering insults to keep the pressure cooker hot. Castmate Andrew Sachs felt uneasy throughout rehearsals. Cleese later admitted he hated method acting, but couldn't find another way to summon Basil's storm. Add to that public expectation. When Cleese walks into an interview, journalists still nudge him to deliver, "Don't mention the war," on command. He obliges, but each repetition chips shine off the original joke. He worries that over-quoting turns a sharp line into wallpaper, noticed but not thought about. By refusing to watch, he signals that the episode deserves more than lazy nostalgia. It deserves context, discussion, maybe disagreement, anything but mindless memification. Finally, wartime humor itself has shifted. Britain's shared memory of World War II once bonded generations. Today, many younger viewers learn about it secondhand through video games and streaming docs. A Basil Fawlty goose step lands differently when your great-grandfather, not your father, fought in the trenches. Cleese senses that distance and feels unqualified to referee the new reading. Better to leave the courtroom and let history debate itself. A surprise encore and fresh resolve. Early 2025 brought one twist Cleese hadn't planned. Netflix released a limited series celebrating 50 years of British sitcoms, and every episode closed with modern comedians reacting to classic clips. When The Germans rolled, younger comics argued fiercely, half loving its audacity, half calling it outdated. Their clash went viral, and downloads of Fawlty Towers spiked worldwide. Cleese's inbox flooded with both praise and criticism, but one note from a German fan stood out. "Your episode made my grandfather confront his own jokes about the war. Thank you." That single line reminded Cleese why satire matters. He still won't watch the episode, yet he's quietly funding a documentary on comedy's power to heal old wounds. Proof that you can step away from a joke and still let it start conversations. Conclusion. The reel stays locked, but its echoes travel further every year, reminding us that vulnerability often fuels the loudest laughs. Comedy ages, people change, and what once felt daring can later feel difficult. Cleese isn't watching, yet we're still talking about that episode nearly 50 years later, and every nervous "don't mention the war" keeps the debate alive. Behind every brilliant punchline is a human being who wonders if the joke will still land tomorrow. Maybe that's why it matters. Laughter isn't just fun. It's complicated, personal, and sometimes painful. Yet it's also the spark that keeps us asking hard questions long after the credits roll.